the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Which is, I think, delightful.
It is absolutely delightful. Speaking of delightful things, the Seattle Mariners giving the gift of Jared Kelenic in a salary dump this week, which caught us all off guard. I've said on this podcast for the last 2 weeks, John, where I was like, there's just something about DePoto and Alex Anthopoulos that just, I thought it was going to be Logan Gilbert as the guy that the Braves would end up trading for out of this group.
It's not too late.
It's not too late. Maybe they just do another deal. But, I mean, it's a tough look for a team that finally ended the playoff streak. They have a young superstar in Julio Rodriguez. You have some, I mean, Logan Gilbert is not going anywhere anytime soon.
You have a good rotation.
You traded your closer down the stretch last year when you're in a playoff chase, was just kind of weird. And, you know, I think Mariners fans are just kind of uneasy about where things are headed. And if you're a Mariners fan, you're like, Marco Gonzalez, whatever. Like, Braves trade him for a salary dump, obviously, to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Where else would you do a salary dump pitcher at this point?
Where else would Marco Gonzalez end up is the other thing.
Yeah, that's just the most Marco Gonzalez trade possible of anybody.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I feel like Bronson Arroyo went through this in his later years, and Gavin Floyd was going through this, where they bounced around bad NL Central teams when they were just like a 4.25 ERA pitcher. We were like, they're just, hey, they're cash those checks, man. Whatever you got to do. But you're not going to win. You're not going to be on a winning team. All that being said, I love this move. I do love Double-A just being like, it's Vaughn Grissom. We're playing like maybe he's going to have to compete with Vaughn at left field going into next year. And we're all like, I don't think that's happening.
mean, that feels to me like a platoon likely is Grissom.
But Kelenic doesn't need a platoon. Kelenic actually hits pretty well on both sides. Like, it's not really one of those where he's significantly weaker on one side of the plate than the other. Like, I don't think that's actually, with a lefty or righty pitcher, his splits are okay. Like, I don't think he needs a platoon.
Yeah, I mean, I figure maybe it's not a straight platoon. Maybe it's just Grissom becomes kind of a super utility guy who can fill in that spot.
I think Grissom's getting traded, John.
I wouldn't be surprised if I wonder if part of it's just the Braves just kind of offering him all over the place and being like, seriously, does anyone want Vaughn Grissom? Please, someone take Vaughn Grissom.
Like, we're trying not to. He's so good that we are just so careful about where we put him in this lineup that we just don't want to ruin him because we're so careful about Vaughn Grissom. Do not think about the beginning of this past season. It didn't happen.
Just wave it with a little clock on a chain or watch on a chain just to hypnotize.
You will be bought in on Vaughn Grissom.
Calling Mariners fans uneasy about things right now, I think, is an understatement. They're pissed, and with good reason. What the Mariners are doing is, it's repellent. And look, it is a clear strategy on their part where very clearly the money, the finance, whatever you want to call it, the money is no longer there for whatever reason, be it the issues they've had with their regional sports network, Root Sports, no longer being a part of, I think, a regular kind of set cable package, whether it's ownership itself just pulling back in the wake of signing Julio Rodriguez and Luis Castillo to big deals, whether it's some combination of that with DePoto insisting that he can actually figure out a way to do this for less money. I don't know, but the end result is this is a worse team solely to save money. Because on a baseball level, and this is true of the Kelenic trade, this is true of the Eugenio Suarez trade, this is true of pretty much every move the Mariners have made this offseason, there's no good baseball reason to do this. There's no good baseball reason to trade Kelenic, or at least not for what they got in exchange, which is to say nothing really.
Yeah.
You know? This was a salary dump, like you said. It was about getting rid of Marco Gonzalez's contract and getting rid of Evan White's contract. That was pretty much it. Whatever issues there are with Kelenic, and there are plenty, that's not a guy who moving him makes your team better. I don't think. Unless you then turn around and get someone better than
like
him.
Ozuna, or if you include Ozuna in the trade or something, like it's a swap or something where it's like you're still trying, like you're not trying to go backwards.
Or if there had been some sign that, like, yes, the Mariners are doing this, but because they're trying to clear space or something for Soto or Ohtani. That's clearly not happening. This is clearly just about getting this payroll down. And that the most frustrating thing, and this is, the way Mariners fans, I think, feel particularly about it, is this has been the case forever. There has never been that point where the Mariners have said, okay, We're ready. We're going to go in. We're going to make the money. We're going to make things happen. We're going to spend the money to make this team go. It is perpetually, as DePoto put it, that quest for 54%, where we're going to do just enough to get ourselves to that point. Because that is what our ownership has deemed to be that's their limit, essentially. They are not going to do the big moves that take you from a potential 82, 83, 84 win team to something closer to 90, 91 plus wins, to get you out of the wild card conversation and into the division conversation. Because that's the other part of this. The AL West between Houston and Texas, that is a really hard hill for the Mariners to climb. And so there really are only two responses they can have to it. One is to say, screw it, we're going to go in too. We're going to put the pressure on those teams. We know we have a good roster that we like. We have some advantages built in, or what they are currently doing, which is to say, screw it then, fine. We'll just try to get to 500 or above as cheaply as possible. Because again, that's all these moves are about. Especially like replacing Eugenio Suarez with Luis Urias, for all intents and purposes, that does not make you a better baseball team. That makes you a cheaper baseball team. Similarly, replacing Jared Kelenic with some combination of Sam Haggerty and Taylor Trammell and Dominic Canzone and whatever other dude, Cade Marlowe. I might just be making names up at this point. Just whatever combination of utility guys and quad A outfielders and non-roster invites in spring training, that does not make you a better team. It just makes you a cheaper one. And it's really hard. It's hard. It sucks. Especially like it's one thing for a team like the Pirates to do this because you don't expect any better from them. It's another thing when it's a team that has the legitimate potential to be a postseason team. The one team that has not appeared in the World Series in all of Major League Baseball, the one team left that has not won a pennant. It baffles me that this is something that Mariners ownership and DePoto too, because look, for as much as he's an employee, this is on him too. He has agreed to make these moves. He has agreed to try to do this. I don't understand, and it stinks that ownership and that front office think that this is an appropriate way to build a baseball team, or maybe not even so much to build a baseball team, because leave that aside, that this is an appropriate way to treat a fan base. A fan base that has known nothing but struggle, but missed opportunities, that has already seen this franchise waste the primes of some of the best players in both their history and Major League history. To get nothing out of your time with Ken Griffey Jr., nothing out of your time with A-Rod, nothing out of your time with Felix Hernandez, nothing out of your time with Ichiro. Now you're setting up to get nothing out of your time with Julio Rodriguez. That's unconscionable. You cannot do that. You should not be allowed to do that. Forget MLB trying to figure out how do we make the hot stove season. Figure out how to put pressure on owners to do right by their fan bases and build the best teams possible without crying cheap the entire time. Because this does not benefit anyone. This does not benefit fans in Seattle. It doesn't benefit baseball as a whole. It benefits no one whatsoever that the Mariners can just so cavalierly go, you know what, we just don't feel like trying this year. So we're just going to try to save as much money as we can while we figure something out later. It's a bummer. It's a huge, huge bummer. I feel so bad for Mariners fans that this is what they are tied into and will be unless ownership either changes course because of the outcry from fans, which it's not actually managed to do anything in the past, or this ownership group ideally realizes we are not the right people to be doing this because we don't have the financial backing to make this happen.
And just because everyone's invisible, right? Like I think owners want to, I think about this a lot where, Cohen is pretty upfront and he's dialed in and he's willing to accept the smoke, but like Braves fans don't even know who to look at. It's invisible, like Liberty Media obviously being in Colorado and everything else. You didn't see them. There's just so many owners now that just can, especially Major League Baseball, I feel like there's more shadow owners in Major League Baseball than other sports, it feels like. I don't know if you agree.
It does, I think. I very much think, and some of this too is just when you have ownership groups that are like Liberty Media or the ones that are just split up, where the pie is split up 15 different ways with a lot of minority owners. You don't really have this is not well, I guess he's no longer the owner, but not a Mark Cuban situation where you have your rogue billionaire who can just throw money around. That's really just Steve Cohen. For everyone else,
maybe Crane a little bit now too. Yeah,
but for everyone else, it's a business first and foremost. Yeah. And for the Mariners, that business is we will spend as little as possible, while trying to build a team that at least nominally can contend. But the sad part of this is this Mariners team is not gonna contend the way it's currently
No.
constructed, you know, and so
No.
you're putting yourself in that position where you're saving the money, but at the expense of wasting the talent that you've already accumulated, wasting the time of the fans who pay money to go to these games, who pay money to watch these games. You know, baseball teams are not literally a public trust, but they are figuratively and essentially a public trust. You know, and they should be treated as such, not as essentially an interest generating machine for the billionaire class. And it's again, it's just super frustrating to see how the Mariners have chosen to go about this offseason, especially again because and in particular how close they were on Ohtani when he signed with Anaheim the first time around. You would think that they would have been right there in it again, that Dipoto would have been right back in there to tell him, look, come join Julio Rodriguez, come join Luis Castillo, come be on, you know, come be the spiritual heir and successor to Ichiro, you know? Do what he couldn't here. And instead they straight up just were not involved in the process. That's a real shame. The shame is putting it lightly, but it's hard to watch, truly.
That it is Jon Tayler. Well, I have another question for you. Dodgers, good idea or not to make Mookie Betts the everyday second baseman that they are planning to do in 2024?
So I think for me, I don't know if it's a good idea or bad idea so much as it really kind of seems like their only real option at second base because the Dodgers infield is just kind of mutated into this unusable mess. So part of this is that the various kind of moves they've had to make, particularly in the wake of losing Corey Seager and then Trey Turner, by having to move Gavin Lux to shortstop, who, you know, ideally would have been the second baseman. Part of this, too, was that second base used to be Max Muncy's purview before, in the era of kind of shift, in the era of the defensive shift and kind of positionless baseball. A little easier to play a guy like Muncy at second when you can essentially position him as needed and not have to worry so much about his lack of range or his the other issues that compromise him at second base. But the Dodgers right now do not really have that short or long-term option at second base.
Go. Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.